Welcome back to another episode of an Investor's Journey podcast. I am your host, Jonathan Barbera. And in this episode, you are not going to get to see my pretty face, but we're not doing a video because on Friday, we did an interview with the Rivard Report, which is a local newspaper here in San Antonio. And to give you a little backstory on why we did this interview, they came out with an article pretty much saying that investors are predatory, we're the worst of the worst, right? And it was very, very one-sided article, which I will be linking that article and this new article on our website, PRYMEhomes.com. So if you want to read the articles, you can definitely go there and check them out. But so it was very one-sided. Even the mayor of San Antonio came on saying that, it was regarding the water shutoff list for San Antonio. So pretty much in a nutshell, the article was that investors are requesting the water shutoff list and they're contacting these people that their waters have been shut off and trying to buy their house from them, right? And they made it seem like that was very predatory, that was taking advantage of somebody's bad situation and all this other nonsense. And I mean, then the mayor came in and he says that was very predatory marketing. And then some realtor came in saying that, and all investors do are over improve houses and then push the values where the neighborhood can't support them. All these things, it just makes no damn sense, right? So I went ahead and I wrote an email to the reporter and I pretty much told them, I'm like, hey, this article is extremely one-sided. Investors, we're not that bad. We are needed. So if you want to hear the other side, just let me know. And he did respond, and he's like, I would love to hear the other side. And so we set up that interview. And funny enough, that in that interview, he told us that it wasn't even what he was going after originally. Originally, they had told him to check out the water shutoff list because they thought that homeowners were being targeted by these credit companies that will lend them a certain amount to take care of that debt that they have at a ridiculously high interest rate and probably get a lien on their home and all this other nonsense. So that's where they thought it was going. He didn't know that the majority of the people requesting the list were investors. But we went over, why we request those lists, what our goals are, why people need us, why sellers need us. So the interview was at a coffee shop, so it's a little loud background noise. And I was very sick. My throat was really jacked up, so you're going to hear my voice was pretty messed up. But you'll be able to understand and hear everything pretty clearly. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview. And without further ado, here it is.
Real estate around 2014, and then quit my job, went full-time in early 2015. So going on 5 years, full-time at it. And I've had my license for 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. So I just renewed this year. So.
Okay, so realtor for 4 years then. How would you describe your business?
So we're a small investment company. We started off wholesaling, what people do, kind of like what you were reporting about, how they find a house and then they get it under contract, sell it to an investor. And then we just evolved into an investment company where now we buy our own flips, our own rentals. We started to develop as well. So we're building houses in Seguin, Newry. So I guess...
Is it kind of just like a one at a time thing or like...
No, we'll have multiple going on. I mean, right now we have 4 renovations and then 2 rental properties that are being renovated and then new build in Seguin, and we're working on the 3 units here in Dignity as well.
So when to identify places you might be interested in investing in, have you ever used this water list before? Or?
No. I know it's a common kind of thing that people do use. I've heard about it recently as far as the water list goes.
Yeah.
But it's nothing that we focus on because usually we purchase homes from somebody that's already kind of found the property, from the typical the wholesaler, somebody that's located, because that's a full-time job in itself, is trying to find distressed properties or something wrong with the property to be able to get under contract at a price that can work. So that the nature of real estate has really shifted in the last several years because of how the growth that is happening here in San Antonio and the need for housing here. So a lot of people are getting into real estate, and HGTV doesn't really help that either.
Right. So, where did you see my story? Are you guys like? I'm assuming you're not checking the Rivard Report homepage every day.
No, that's Facebook.
Yeah, I saw it on
Was it in like one of the kind of groups?
I always follow the Rivard Report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that stuff kind of pops up.
Yeah, we all local media and everything, especially when it's regarding real estate, because we like to see what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
And
I mean, just as a small business owner, we want to know what's going on in our market, whether it's any kind of business, just to see what's kind of happening and stuff like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so we follow the Rivard Report, Business Journal, San Antonio News, kind of.
So what was your reaction to seeing like the mayor and that one realtor I talked to and all these people talk about the industry overall?
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, it seemed very one-sided, and I understand where they're coming from, because like every business, you have your bad characters, right? You have them in real estate, as you do in real estate agents.
There's not a single bad character in journalism.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Not a single one.
Yeah.
And it's just, and unfortunately, those are always the ones that get the most spotlight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Somebody that does bad gets all the attention.
Yeah.
And while kind of like the water shut off list sounds, they made it sound so predatory, right? But nobody's forcing them to sell. Like, it's a simple marketing. Like, if somebody's water gets shut off, a lot of times it's because the house is vacant.
Yeah.
If a house is sitting vacant, houses don't like to be sitting vacant. They get vandalized, they get broken into, things just break on the house because it's not being used. So for the person holding it vacant, it becomes a headache, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we've contacted people. They were like, man, I just don't have the time to deal with this house.
Yeah.
And if we didn't contact them, it would have just sat there vacant, right? So it's not predatory, and we don't force them to sell. It's like, hey, I see your house is, the water got shut off. I see it's vacant. Are you interested in selling?
Right.
And that's how the conversation starts.
I mean, so how long you go the traditional route, you like find a realtor, you put it on the market, you do that whole thing. How long does that take versus something like
very
what the
rarely.
industry
So
offers? Yeah.
if a homeowner has a distressed home, foundation issues, whatever it may be, that's distressed. A retail buyer is never going to purchase that home. You understand? Because they don't have the capital to buy it, do all the renovations.
Banks won't lend against a property that's distressed. The FHA guidelines, the Dodd-Frank doesn't allow. If it's got foundation issues, no bank's going to lend the money.
Right,
so your retail buyer doesn't have the cash, $100,000 to not only buy the house, but then another $50,000 to put money to fix the house up, to where a bank then will lend on it. So that's where like an investor comes in and has that capital to be able to do that and get that house performing again, to where it can basically join society again, and a retail buyer can move into that house and can use that property.
And what we've been seeing lately is so many people are getting into real estate because it's such a low barrier to entry that a lot of people become agents. And with them becoming agents, the homeowner says, hey, I want to sell my house for $150,000, right? As somebody that's in real estate, we'll analyze the house and be like, it's just never going to sell for the $150,000 because it's not worth it. It needs this amount of work. And in this market, it's going to sell for, let's say, $100,000. But that agent, a lot of them are like, yeah, sure, I'll sell it for $150,000 because they want that commission.
Well, it's not necessarily
But then
commission.
they look
at the comps too. So they run a traditional comp saying square price per square foot is apples to apples. Well, it's like this house that can't qualify for financing and needs so much repair.
Yeah.
That's not apples to apples anymore. That's apples to oranges. And it's saying they list at the $150,000. Well, they don't realize that could be hurting their client because the house isn't worth $150,000. And they put that false notion into their seller's mind. That's like, oh, my house is worth $150,000. So when they're getting offers at $100,000 from an investor, they're like, oh, I'm never going to take that loss. It's like, well, that's because that's what the market will pay for your house because of the conditions currently in.
And a lot of those people, like especially in foreclosures, they end up getting their homes foreclosed on because they didn't go the route they should have gone, which is sell to an investor, because that's really the only person that's going to buy it, right? I mean, what we're going to spend to renovate a house, a homeowner is not going to spend that. You're going to spend 2 or 3 times more because the contractors are not going to give them the prices we get because we have repeat business for them, right? They're not going to get the materials at the prices we get because we buy in bulk. So when you look at all those things, in order for them to renovate that house or for a retail buyer to renovate that house, it's going to cost them tremendously more than it's going to cost us to renovate it.
Yeah.
So then all you're doing is hurting that seller, right? And one of the comments that realtor made at the end, it really upset me because he says, or she said,
Lynn,
she says that investors over-improve and then they price it too high and it hurts the local market.
Right.
We've seen it in this area specifically.
I was going to ask about Dignity.
Yeah. You can over-improve, you can list too high, and it still won't sell. It'll sit on the market.
Yeah.
It's happened to us. We've renovated houses that we saw an uptrend in the market, and we're like, all right, if we renovate it and we put it 5-10 grand higher, that uptrend should make sense. And we got smacked down. The market said, nope, we just don't want to pay that high. So the market is not going to pay where the prices aren't. Like, it's not going to appraise. The buyers are not going to be there. So the investors are not dictating that.
Would it not, though, if there's like a flood of investment into a certain area kind of at one time, so everything's kind of lifting, like,
as long as the
rising
buyer's
tide's
there.
lifting all the boats?
But you still need a buyer to buy that house.
Yeah,
and if a buyer doesn't want to pay that, they won't pay it.
But there would be no buyers if there were no, I guess, we're talking about like a micro level, like a single individual home level, and I guess when I look at some of their responses, I almost think they're talking about neighborhood level, like industry level, like the whole parts of the city kind of level, where the industry is like, and it's interesting because it's like they're expressing to me these feelings about investors overall.
Yeah.
When we're talking about something that's kind of not super
that's
relevant to it, we're talking about
also,
something that's bigger,
we talk about too is like everyone wants to blame the developer or blame the investor, but it's like we're also just a product of the market. We follow regulations, we follow trends that are like the banking industries. Like if banks won't lend money against a property, prices are going to fall.
Yeah.
So that's why exactly like the house is distressed and something's wrong with it. Foundation, very common issue here. Like bank won't lend against it, so that means the price now falls.
Yeah.
So like this area, especially on this side, is like there is a lot of high price homes, and they're all sitting on the market because they price them too high and the buyers aren't there. They've oversaturated the market. But when you oversaturate something, eventually prices are going to fall back down to find that supply and demand equilibrium. Right now, there's just too much supply, not enough demand.
Right.
Or the quality's not there on the renovation, or something is not allowing the house to be sold.
Yeah.
So the investor can try to price it, but at the end of the day, they have we all use borrowed money. So we all have loans against these properties. Well, eventually that loan's going to come due. Or something's not going to perform where you have to drop that price back down to where an equilibrium
And we
hits.
see that a lot. I mean, we see that a lot with a lot of investors that are getting into it the first time, and then they call us and they say, hey, I need help finishing this project. And I go look at it, and then we look at the comps and we're like, all right, you're going to lose 20 grand. If everything goes right, you're going to still lose money because you overpaid, overimproved, and this market just it's not going to support that value.
Yeah.
You understand? So there is a right way of doing it, and there's a way to make money, but I can't come in and say Dignity, the market value is 400 grand, overimprove, build a castle, put it for $1 million, and it's going to sell.
Right.
Because it's not. You understand? Like the market's going to come in and say, nope. Now, if I take that, put in the Dominion, that might sell, right? But here, it's not going to. The market is the market.
There's still a big gap from what Dignity was, though, in terms of where the market was and where it is now, right? And there's no doubt that is because of investment in a lot of ways.
And it is.
It's the city, too. The city wants that. So the city wants density near downtown. That's their thing.
Yeah.
In order to get density, the city's not going to create that. Investors are. Because the city is not in the business of developing, building, doing any of that.
Yeah.
They provide incentives to get people to develop, because we're building 3 houses down here, and that's what it is. It's like it's not just the developers doing it; it's the incentives of like the business and stuff. Like 10 years ago, Dignity wasn't what it is today. Also, 10 years ago, Pearl wasn't what it was today. We didn't have downtown wasn't what it was today. We didn't have Frost Tower, so it's a lot of incentives, a lot of kind of macroeconomic scenarios that are kind of driving that. And I think it was Julian Castro. I think in 2010 he said it was the decade of downtown.
Yeah.
So they made a lot of business incentives to get business back into the downtown, like the opportunity zone thing. Like pretty much all of downtown is an opportunity zone to where they want investment where these old dilapidated buildings that are sitting vacant, underutilized. It's just an investor to go in there, have the knowledge and the capital to improve that and put it back into something that can produce jobs, that can produce additional tax revenue, which then goes to fund new streets, new water utilities and stuff, which has happened in Dignity in this area. They've gone through and put new sidewalks, redone streets. The capital's got to come from somewhere. The tax revenue, revenue's got to come from increased growth, and that's kind of the macroeconomic balance of it. So that's kind of
so it's interesting for the mayor to be like, well, I mean, I think for him, some of the neighborhood community activists, and they're about wanting to see the neighborhood change more slowly and organically. But that, I think, for the mayor, it was about it was about what he perceived as the marketing tactics in using that list, I guess. So.
But it's also focusing on a small submarket of that list that it is bad. Like if somebody's in very dire financial straits and they can't afford their water bill, that is tragic. But we have no way to determine that when you say water shut off. There's probably a high percentage of that is people moving or vacant house or some other scenario. But we have no way to determine. There's not like a red line that says this person's is in serious trouble.
And it's also it's a precursor to a worse situation.
Yeah.
So if they're already falling behind where they can't pay their water, right, which is, a necessity of being in a home, running water, if you can't pay your water, the next thing most of the time is foreclosure, right? You're going to lose your home. The earlier you can help that seller, the more money they're always going to get. Because the more they fall behind, the more they owe, the less money they're going to get, right? So the earliest that we can get to a distressed homeowner, the better the deal for that homeowner is going to be. Exactly. And there's a lot of times that we get to a homeowner where they're like, hey, I just fell behind a little bit. I'm all caught up. I don't need to sell. Awesome. We're not going to force you. Like, we can't force you out of your house. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to find that person that's like, this house has become a nightmare. I can't afford it. I need to get out. And we start helping them. All right, how can you get out? What's the most that we can pay for your house? Where can you go? Can we help you find an apartment? Can we get you assistance on moving?
A lot of times, too, it's like we move in and it's like, hey, I need some time to move, but I can't do it with this foreclosure looming and stuff like that. We've bought houses and leased it back to them for a short period of time because all their money is locked up in the house, in the equity of the house, and they can't get that without somebody buying it. Yeah. So we can buy the house and say, say they're getting 10 grand or whatever it may be. Here's $5,000 to help you move, and once you're out of the house, the other $5,000 is released. And there's a form called a seller's leaseback, and it's regulated by TREC, the Texas Real Estate Commission, and it's there for that reason. Like, hey, someone needs to move out, then you lease the property back for a short period of time. And we've done that plenty of times, and because sometimes that's the person's only way out of their situation is to sell, to get the equity out of their home, to have expenses or funds to move, or to put a deposit on an apartment.
And that's the only things investors can do. Realtors don't do that. A realtor is not going to structure a deal in a way of saying, okay, we're going to structure a sell a lease back, and we're going to make sure the retail buyer gives you time, and they don't do that. Yeah. You understand? So an investor does, because we're looking at it differently.
Yeah, it's a different business in a lot
of ways. Yeah. We know the risks and the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Because when you're a licensed agent using your license, you have fiduciary responsibilities. The broker's involved. You're regulated by the state. To where from that side, we've had several people that I've represented just on the traditional buy-sell side, and they're wanting, hey, can I move in early? Well, it's kind of like, yes, technically you can. There are contracts for that, but the risk you run by doing that, to where if this person moves into that house and the house they haven't bought it yet, you let them move in early, and they move all their stuff in there, and all of a sudden their financing moves through or falls through, and they're broke. Now you're stuck paying a mortgage, and somebody's living in your house that can't buy it, and now they have to somehow move all their stuff out. So it becomes much more risky at that scenario for the fiduciary responsibility we have for our clients in that scenario. But as an investor, it's saying like, hey, we know what our risks are, and it's already taken into account, so we can go ahead and buy and do that, because we're working more off of private capital that doesn't have massive lending regulations and closing documents that are this heck of disclosures.
As a real estate agent, can you advertise in the same way can you market in the same way that off-market investors do?
No.
Okay.
So it all depends on the wording that's being used, and that's kind of a little bit of a hot topic which way it is. But if I'm marketing representing to say, hey, I will sell your house. Well, now I'm advertising that I am going to represent you in the process of selling your house. So now I have to disclose that I'm a real estate agent. But now an investor comes and like, hey, let me buy your house. I'm not representing you in any way. It's like, hey, I'm trying to buy your home. So it all depends on how you're marketing or something. But so now I have to disclose that I'm an agent if I'm looking to represent who to sell a house. But if I'm looking to buy, I have to disclose it, but not in the same fashion that as if I'm going to represent you in the sale of the home. There's a section in the TREC 1-4 contract that I have to disclose that I have a real estate license.
Yeah.
But I would say like I'm not representing you in this scenario because we're acting as a buyer in that sense. And in no way are we saying don't go get a real estate agent. But now when you hire a real estate agent, your typical commission is 3%.
Yeah.
So now that increased costs in scenarios like that. So like a lot of people, you look at a traditional sale, it can cost a seller anywhere 8 to 10% to sell a house. When you 3% for the buyer's agent, 3% for the seller, and usually 2 to 4% in closing costs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where that can get very expensive, and that comes out of the seller's equity because the seller is one that pays for buyer and seller commissions.
Do you think that there are people who are kind of just being too aggressive in their marketing strategies? Like
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately just like every industry. Like those people are the ones that catch all the attention.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people that do it in a very aggressive way that we would never do it, and it's just like.
I mean,
how would you do it? What do you think is the right way to do it? Like, say someone tells you they're not interested. How would you handle that?
Nothing. I mean, when somebody tells me, because we've done a lot of marketing in the past, and somebody says, no, I don't want to sell my house, not a problem. If you ever change your mind, you have my phone number, give me a call.
Yep.
That's it. Like, I mean, the way we look at it is you can't sell the unsellable kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to waste my time going after somebody that is not interested in selling because they just don't need to.
Yeah.
You understand? So the goal in marketing is targeting a motivated seller, right? Somebody that needs to sell their home for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They're relocating, they're behind on payments, they're facing foreclosure, whatever these are. And our goal is to put ourselves in front of them, like saying, hey, we're an option. Because there's so many times, even though you said a lot of people, they're like, oh, they could just go online. Yeah, they can, but they like dealing with somebody local, somebody that they can talk to face to face. You understand? And they can go online, and many people do. They go online, they search, they find the same thing. They find investors, that we buy houses and all those, and they get an offer from them. It's the same thing, right? It's just a different form of marketing. But and we do this in our podcast, and we talk about it. That we say like, you can't be so aggressive. Like you have to have some form of ethics when you operate in this business. You got to think about the long term of your business, right?
Yeah.
What's your brand going to look like 5-10 years from now?
Yeah.
So don't do shady stuff today, right?
There's a lot of analogies in my world. I think one of them is like, okay, so if I want an interview, I can call you and email you and say I'm interested in talking, and you can say no.
All right.
And I think that I should leave it at that. But reporters will go to people's homes. They'll ambush them in parking lots. They will do anything to like try to.
Yeah.
But you can't persuade somebody who's not motivated to talk to you that they should talk to you. It's just like anything.
And if you do force that, it usually gets hostile. It depends where somebody starts yelling, and it's just like, I'm not talking to you, and then that's what gets on the air.
The only way.
So it just degrades the whole profession, I think.
Yes.
Another one talking about like micro versus macro. I mean, a good example for me is I had to go and cover the Sutherland Spring shooting a couple years ago outside of San Antonio, and when I got there, it was a mess of like hundreds of media from all over the country who just descended on this poor tiny town who had like were hunting for anything, any little
story.
scrap of emotion of a story or something. And I got there and I was like, you know what? Let's go. Let's get out of here. This is gross.
Yeah.
I haven't ever done anything like that again. And I've gone to something to a media circus like that and stayed because it just degrades the whole profession. It doesn't help anyone. Makes everyone look bad.
So just like that example is the same thing like the mayor coming out and saying that investors are bad or all these things are bad, right?
Sure.
When you have your good reporters, right, that you go and you show up and you see like it's this quiet little town and everybody just going for blood, and you're like, that's not right.
Yeah.
And you have that in the investment space where we see that and we try to tell people, like, don't do that. Don't don't prey on their weaknesses just because you can.
Yeah.
You understand? Because there's a lot of people that are very good at selling. They have a good talk. They know how to manipulate people. There's so many investors that are lying to people the same way that you have agents that don't know what the hell they're doing. You have investors that don't know what they're doing. And they end up telling them, these sellers that whatever they want to hear, and all they do is just kill their time. You understand? And then they end up getting foreclosed on.
Yeah.
And we're always fighting that. So we recently became the vice presidents of the Alamo Real Estate Investment Association.
Oh, really? I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
It would have been good to call. Yeah. Yeah.
So the Alamo RIA, it's a national RIA. It's and we just became the vice presidents of that. And our goal with it is to push for ethical business, because an investor, again, when you have a distressed home, when you have a home that's broken down, that has issues, or the homeowner's distressed, we're the ones that can close in 2 days.
Yeah.
We're the ones that can help them delay a foreclosure. We're the ones that can help them stay in their home for an extra month so they can get their stuff together.
Yeah.
We're the ones that can do all those things. Mm-hmm. So we are needed.
Right.
As well as an agent. A good agent is always needed, and we work with a lot of agents. When they find these really distressed homes, and they're like, hey, if I put it on the market, they're gonna get lowballed, and on top of that, they got to pay the agent fees, right? Where if they just bring it to me, we'll buy it for what it is, and then when we fix it up, we give it to that agent to go ahead and list. You understand? So it's like, though they do their business, there's a place for that, but there's also a place for us. There's also a place for investors that do it correctly. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest part, is that doing it correctly, but that's in every field, unfortunately.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
So I spoke to a state rep yesterday, Diego Bernal, who says he's going to introduce legislation next session to stop the collection of these water lists. There's an exemption to the open records law for power utilities, like that they can avoid disclosing that information. That's why I saw what I saw.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that. It was like, how can one do it and not the other? So it's just power.
It just says public power utilities. There's a little exemption written in there, and it's interesting how it cuts both ways for me, because I actually use that. I use the same open records law. I ask for addresses too, but when I do it, I usually, for the water side, I'm looking for the largest users in a time of drought. So I want to find out who's wasting public water on their lawn, just using absurd millions of gallons of water or something like that. And it's been a controversial story that media have done, just the top 100 water users list in San Antonio. But I can get that. I can't get it from CPS. I can't get, and they'll actually, that exemption will cover things that I think should be disclosed. So I wanted to find out how efficient the school districts are being with their facilities, and how they're using real estate, or not, how they're using rebates for equipment, like energy efficiency equipment. They're saying that they don't have to disclose that, even though it's taxpayer money that's paying for everything. So it's interesting.
It makes you kind of, curious. It's like
what's the right balance of all this stuff? I think we all want people to have their privacy, right?
Yeah. Well, that's also the issue when they start getting into regulating stuff.
Yeah.
Usually they over-regulate,
right.
And they don't do enough. Mm-hmm. They never find that perfect balance.
That's government.
And let's say with the water shutoff, right?
Yeah.
I get it, but then at the same time, how many people have we spoken to that they didn't know they had other options, right? So it's like, if you make that list private, then nobody can get it. It's fine, but then those people are the only ones that are getting hurt, because we're just gonna keep figuring out new ways of finding people that are in distress, right? So where does that benefit them? They're the only ones getting screwed out of that situation. An investor's still gonna be able to invest, right? We're still gonna find properties any other way, right? Yeah. So now the only ones that are losing out are the people that they didn't really have
the
properties that are
they live out of state. So many people live out of state. They just don't know, right? They inherited a property. It's sitting vacant. It's getting vandalized. Things are happening. If somebody breaks in and they get hurt, they can sue them. All these things happening, and they live in California and they have no idea. Yes, there needs to be personal responsibility,
to a property, secure it, but at the same time, they don't know what their options are.
Sure.
Right? So
especially in the market they may not be familiar with, too.
Exactly.
So they don't know.
Things are much different in Texas than they are in California. So
Yeah, it's like, this is great. I always thought Grandma's house on the east side of downtown San Antonio was worthless because it was falling apart and everything. They didn't know that it was in a growth area.
you didn't know that the dirt underneath it went up tenfold,
Yeah.
which is what happened to a lot of it. And that's one thing is the case for what investors do, because I do a lot of market research, and I put out a monthly market report that I do personally. And you look at these zip codes, and 78207 is just west of downtown, very large zip code. And historically, that was some of the cheapest real estate in town. And what it was is the values never went up. So if you got houses worth less than 100,000, but they were built in 1910, 1920, 1930s, and they've never been updated. They don't have electrical, plumbing, HVAC, no roofs.
Yeah.
The cost to buy that house, to renovate something like that, it's like, and the house is only worth $100,000, because the banks, when they do an appraisal, they're going to look at what are houses, very similar houses around that area worth.
Yeah.
So we can't. That's one reason we say, like, you can't charge $200,000 when every house around you is selling for $100,000. Like, the bank won't appraise. Even if somebody wants to pay that, you can't get a loan against it for that value. So, like, once values do increase, that's where an investor can go in there now, put that capital improvement into it to get that house onto the performing market and back to the general public to where they can invest on that property. So that's one of those things that's like, an investor can do that where a typical homeowner wouldn't be able to, because of the capital improvements needed. And the one, just mainly the market knowledge, where we know the right amount of capital that needs to go into that property to make it worth the value that it's worth, where somebody goes in, and you see it in homeowners all the time, like, they're emotional about their houses. So they go in and spend $100,000 in the kitchen. And like, oh, I got this special granite from this exotic place. Well, the bank doesn't care where you got that granite. It's the fact that it's got granite, which your house next door has granite, was from a local store. That value is an apples to apples comparison. They don't value that extra stuff. So a homeowner can go in there and spend way too much money and then try to sell it, and they're like, they can't recoup their cost.
Or they call,
So
like,
you're saying like the traditional market can lead to that situation that the realtor was describing, where things are overinvested in and overbuilt, and like,
and they can, because people don't realize, like, you put a pool in, they're like, oh, I built this beautiful pool, it cost me $100,000. Well, the appraisal only gave you 20 for it.
Yeah.
It's like, that can happen, but that's why, like, and the people are
but
building
you can't
houses.
push the value. You
Push
can't
the value.
force the value.
Right,
Like,
right.
you can over-improve, which a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And they still sell for way under, because you can't.
Just the location,
You can't
right?
recover.
Yeah.
Or
it's-
everything around it, maybe.
And that's why so many investors are getting into trouble, where, like I told you before, how we've gotten called from people that are losing 20, 30, 40 grand because they over-improve, they pay too high for the house, and they're like, well, I want to sell it for 400. I'm like, I don't care what you want to sell it for. The comps are 250.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry.
Do you think that after Flip This House goes off the air and like all that stuff do you think that there's going to be sort of a decline in the players in this market?
I think
The
another
number of
one's going to
people
come in.
involved? Yeah,
It's
it'll be something else.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at the progression of it. I mean, they've had the HGT, because it is very, like, when you watch it, and you don't understand the business, it is a very entertaining show. Because who wouldn't want to love to buy this really ugly looking thing, put a little bit of effort into it, make it look beautiful, and make a bunch of money?
Yeah.
It's like, but there's so much more to this that.
Well, and the
Make
biggest
that
issue
happen.
I've been seeing lately is a lot of new people have gotten in, and you see them on social media like saying, hey, I don't know anything about real estate, and look at all the money I'm making, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah, I don't know anything about construction, but I just hire an investor-friendly contractor. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You understand? They're getting lucky in some deals because it's a hot market.
Yeah.
And you have people that, we have such a shortage of affordable homes that people are buying these. You understand? But it doesn't mean that you are doing the right business.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you know what's going on. So whenever the market corrects, all of those people are going to be left out of business because they don't know what they're doing.
I think when the industry's really going to change is when the economy changes.
Yeah.
So you can talk to a lot of, I mean, that's why a lot of investors got destroyed in the 2000, like the last recession, because they were buying with the wrong fundamentals. So when the market changed and values fell, they couldn't sustain those investments anymore because they were over leveraging interest-only payments and only betting that the value was going to be worth more without doing any effort to it, and that just the market was going to pay more later on.
Right.
Well, that when that changed, and all of a sudden these loans starting called due, and they can't sell these things. Like that's where a lot of people got hurt. So I think a lot of
I was thinking, like this guy in Colorado who's in your business now, like called me and told me that he was doing that in Nevada, in the Las Vegas area.
Oh.
That happened to him, and now he's in your business, and he's like, I don't really sympathize with you, but you know.
Oh,
like,
it's exactly. They buy for
Yeah.
the wrong fundamentals, and they don't
Yeah.
take because they're chasing the quick cash.
Right.
And so they're not doing it for the right reasons. And that's you do have a lot of people doing that right now. That you have a lot of the HGTV component to it. You have the high pressure sales of people coming in teaching real estate training, charging them $25,000 to buy this coaching. Now they've got to feel like they got to get a return on that, so they get desperate, or they're swiping on a credit card and need to pay it off. So you have a lot of that industry.
And
that
so many of them
does-
are teaching unethical ways of doing it, where they're like, just get it on the contract, doesn't matter, and then just blast it to a buyer's list, and it's like, no, like if you get a property on the contract, that means that you know what you're going to do with that property, right? That you can actually solve that seller's problem, not that you're going to hope that you find a bigger idiot that pays more for that house, right? And that's what they're doing, and those are the things that upset us, which is what we always try to like talk against, because it's like, learn the business, understand what a deal actually looks like, so you can not waste the seller's time, right? Because that is the worst thing. You get their hopes up. You tell them, yeah, I'll pay you $140 for your house, and you shouldn't have paid more than $90 because there's no equity in the house.
Yeah.
Right. So now the seller thinks their house is worth $140. They keep holding out for that $140, and then all of a sudden they're in foreclosure. You understand? And we see that so many times.
It is, and we really do preach on that a lot. Where it's like you just have people like get it under contract for as low as you can and sell it for high as you can. It's like, well, at the end of the day, yes, we're in the business of finding distressed property, but it's also you need to understand that person's situation and do what's right by them. Because if they're in foreclosure and they got less than a month to sell a house, you need to understand what it is that you're doing. Don't hold out that you want to do it for the most amount of money if you're trying to wholesale it to somebody. You need to understand your situation and really be able to help educate that person of the scenario. Like, hey, this is how it is. Like this roof, you can't sell it. It can't be financed with a bad foundation. Like it's not worth that much. But to get out of this situation, you need to have it at this price. You need to sell it at this price. So you do have a lot of people that don't care and they just, or don't know, and just get it under contract for whatever the seller wants. And it's like, well, now that's a very dangerous scenario because the house isn't worth that. So you have a lot of that, just people, exact same people that are going to go away when the market changes is they're chasing the quick cash. They're not really vested in trying to understand how the business actually works.
So like,
they're just chasing quick
we
money.
love real estate. I grew up in construction. We had a construction company in New York, renovated houses my whole life. I grew up in this. I love real estate.
I was going to guess you were Cajun for some reason. I don't know why.
It's my raspy voice. I'm sick.
What was the fleur-de-lis, too, on your keychain? Yeah.
Oh, no, this is from Argentina.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Argentina.
Oh, okay,
My
cool.
uncle sent that up.
Right on.
But he's also from construction, right? He's done commercial, residential construction as well. So, like, we love the industry. We're in it because we love the industry. But a lot of people are getting into it because they look at it as a way to make quick money. And that's how it's offered. I'm going to make a quick $5,000 a month, part-time. And it's like, no. That's not what this is for.
I could see construction being a good background, really, for your field.
Oh, yeah?
Like, because it's not just the moving money around, it's the improvement side of it,
exactly.
too. Then you want the best possible.
And
Like,
that-
if you guys can work the margins on the construction side, that's, like, really good.
Well, it's,
for
you
you to
understand, like a lot of people like say they're accountant. What do they know about a foundation?
Yeah.
They're like, okay, you lift a house 6 inches to reinforce it. It's like, okay, I fixed the foundation. Yeah, but did you count that all the plumbing that runs underneath that house that's going to break, and now you got a tunnel underneath the house to fix that stuff up?
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't do
You
that.
know, the
There's-
doors that are going to be falling off whack that you got to remove and reinstall new
Yeah.
doors.
So a lot of things can go wrong, but then that's where you have the perfect storm of a very hot market, appreciation, we're one of the top 10 metros, a lot of people moving here. Then you have HGTV not helping. Then you have the gurus taking advantage of it. Just the
I was going to ask about the gurus, too. Yeah.
like,
Because
they-
that seems like that's where we're at now,
I
right?
have a phrase on my whiteboard in the office that says open season on gurus. I hate them with a passion.
Because they also come in there, they take all that basically not knowing and ignorance toward it, and they sell it as quick cash. You want to make easy money? Go ahead. This is the perfect way to do it. Pay me $25,000, I'll teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like when they don't realize that person hasn't done real estate in 10 years, and now they're in the process of selling coaching and trying to teach you how they did it 10 years ago. Well, the world wasn't what it is today 10 years ago.
And this
So let me
doesn't-
ask you, like, I won't quote you on this, but like that guy that I did mention who like was teaching everyone with YouTube how to use the water list is Daniel.
From Propelio?
Yeah, Propelio. Does he fall in the guru list that you talk about, or do you think he's one of the better ones, maybe?
Propelio is a...
It's like a software company.
Yeah, they're a CRM company, so they're not... He's not a guru, but he also like teaching people how to invest so that people can buy his software. Because you need some form of CRM system to manage that. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that put out all kinds of education and stuff on there, but you got to understand, like, what is their motive by giving you this information? And for him, it's like, you must use your software. So teaching people how to use a water list, because it is a common way to find a distressed property.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that he's got a good reputation somewhat. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I've been trying to talk to him, but I don't think he's kind of mad at me after the last one. So.
Well, some people, which is why I reached out to you, because so many investors get upset and they get their feelings hurt. And I'm like, no, let's reach out and try to show them our side of things, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
and I was really never. I just stumbled into all this.
Yeah.
Like, so
it's a fascinating industry when you really look at it,
yeah.
And because like. Back to like you just have a perfect storm of things going on, and some people chasing quick cash, some people trying to think out just for themselves, or there is an underlying good fundamental that 80-90% of the people do it right, but the 10% that don't are the ones that also do a lot of damage very quickly.
Definitely hear you.
As the market gets hot, we do see sellers getting taken advantage of, buyers getting taken advantage of, and that's from investors, from agents, from contractors. You understand, like, it's just happening across the board. Because when the market is so hot, everybody comes in. You understand? Everybody's looking for that quick dollar. So it's not just investors. You have it all across the board of just people trying to come in, take advantage of the situation. And on gurus, like, that's not to say that education isn't good.
Right.
You need education.
Yeah.
You need to understand the strategies, the tactics, how to contract the property, the proper contracts, the proper channels. You need to learn that. I just don't think you need to pay $50,000 to learn that, because you're going to get a phone service company that's going to be mentoring you, and that's pretty much, they're like, oh, you're going to get a mentor, and it's just a call center that regurgitates the training. Like that to me is predatory. That's really messed up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Because
somebody's found like just a different way to use this industry to like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they incentivize these people, like, oh, you have 15 credit cards here. We'll put them all 15 because they can't afford it. Mm-hmm. So that's why we started our podcast, and that's why we joined the Alamo, because all our education is free because of that. Like, this is exactly how we do it in San Antonio, in Texas. This is how we manage our renovations, how we do all this, because we want to shut them out. We want to show that it's like, that's bullshit, And people that listen to it, they're like, but that's not the same that this guru taught me. I was like, yes,
that's
because
right.
he doesn't do it.
Yeah, he did it 10 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
They were good at it 10 years ago, and they packaged it up, and they've been selling it for the last 10 years. The market changes, it evolves. And then because people are not making money, they're like, just get anything on the contract and sell it to somebody from California. Like, that's terrible.
Passing the buck off to somebody.
Right.
So it's like,
and then they come in, they have to over-improve, and then they try to overprice, and then they end up losing their ass.
Yeah.
And then they're like, real estate sucks, so they cut corners because they paid too much. So they're like, let's not do this, let's not do that. And it's like, now you're giving a very bad product to the retail buyer.
And that's one reason why the city of San Antonio has gotten more involved in their task force for code enforcement.
Right.
Because that has been happening, especially in these downtown corridors of 100-year-old homes. So we've renovated one just south of here on Montana Street. And, I mean, we went through all the process, the proper channels to do it, but a lot of people don't. Because Inspector Cam doesn't have an X-ray vision. He can't see in the side of that house. Yeah. He can't tell that somebody opened a wall and was like, oh man, we didn't anticipate that. Well, I don't have the money for it, so let's just cover it back up.
Close that all.
Yeah, close it back up, and then you have
exposed wiring.
Fine.
And then the city's also making it difficult. Where we pull permits for all of our renovations, and whenever we get an inspector that comes in, it's like you have the law, the rule, but the rule is vague. Yeah. So it's up to interpretation.
Sure.
And depending on the inspectors, how they want to interpret it that day. And they don't understand that the more they hurt us, the more we got to pass our expenses off to the buyer. So it's like, you're not helping anybody. just tell us what the rules are and we'll follow the rules.
Yeah.
You know, just don't change them every time an inspector comes.
I have a friend who has like a warehouse like a little ways down from here. It's just like it's a different experience with every code inspector. It's
really
like,
is.
It's a completely opposite information.
We had
every
just
time,
one of renovations. I mean, had 4 inspections come through, 4 different stories, 4 different. It's like, what do you want me to do? Please, somebody tell me.
Write it down. Give me a list.
This guy says do this. The next guy comes and says no, don't do that, but do this. I'm like, so what do we do?
Just between us, like I'm very curious if you ever hear anything about bribery in that realm with the code inspectors. Like I'm very interested.
I wish.
I've never heard of it happening, but I just want to put it out. When I talk to people, it's just like if you hear about anything, that's what journalism is for. Let me know.
I haven't heard anything recently. It's more just that working with the city that is just like, oh my God, this is so difficult because it is also.
Plus, these inspectors are extremely overworked. I mean, the one that went to one of our projects, it was 3:30 in the afternoon. I think he clocked out at what he said
4:30, and he had 40 houses to get to, and we were number 10.
Oh my God! Wow.
And it's
So
like
insane. Yeah, how's he supposed to do that? Yeah.
And how is he supposed to do his job correctly? Right? Because now he gets to our project, and just because he doesn't have the time, he either or passes it or fails it.
Right.
But he never takes the time to actually look.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like
that's interesting about their workload. That's too much to do in a day.
Because he was there and he told me that, I was like, that's insane. I was like, how are they supposed to do a good job?
Yeah.
And
Well,
we're
it's also
you
you
need
can't
more of them probably.
you can't request who your inspector is.
Right.
You just can call for an inspection, and you don't talk to the inspector. You talk to the office, or you do it online. So I think they've done a good job of mitigating situations where you could potentially bribe somebody.
Yeah.
Because the city, it's like, I don't know who I'm going to get. Yeah, I don't know how many inspectors they have, but I had 4 different ones on a project. So I don't think.
That's good that we just switch them around. There's a famous story in the 70s in Chicago of like just rampant code enforcement bribery schemes that was going on.
New York too?
Oh yeah, I'm sure New York. Yeah, the Chicago Sun-Times bought a bar, and they would hide reporters and photographers in the ceiling to like watch the inspectors taking bags of cash out and stuff, and like they did this whole series on like having a sting, pretty much.
In New York, we used to.
That was back when we were rich and we could buy bars.
Just buy bars.
Yeah.
In New York, we used to work with builders that whenever an inspection was coming about, they would leave the inspection sheet of the stuff they did, and underneath that, a stack of money.
Oh wow.
And they just left it there. And then all of a sudden their inspections got passed and the money was not there.
That's crazy.
So
that amount of money is like insane though in New York real estate though.
You have to. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to.
But it's nuts. Yeah.
If you push too hard and try to pass too much regulation onto the private sector gets squeezed, and then they have to make margins somewhere.
Yeah.
And then that's when some of that stuff, it's an unintended consequence that if you try to put too much pressure on them, it's like you're going to tank the economy and tank my business, so they're going to fight every way they can.
Right.
And that's where you get some. And I think the city's done a good job of trying to protect the end consumer, but also not make it too overbearing where it can't get done.
That's good.
Well.
Yeah.
But it is a common thing that people talk bad about developers and investors and stuff like that. It's like, oh, greedy developers. Like, we're just a product of the market. Like, land is extremely expensive, labor's up, lumber's up. Like, we still have to turn a profit to stay in business as well. It's like that's what drives prices up. It's not that we're getting it at the same price we were 20 years ago and now just trying to increase it. It's like it all's come up, but we have top pressure from banks and appraisals and what the end consumer can pay. Then you have an underlying pressure of the regulations and what you pay for products, material, land costs, and stuff like that. So we have to work in that. We have a bottom shelf and a top shelf pushing that we kind of have to balance in between. So
yeah, these problems are really hard for like urban, just for urban areas, like in these coming decades. I think of having this. In San Antonio, it's interesting because it's almost like there's this trade-off between like the really rapidly changing neighborhoods and like inner city prices going up a lot and gentrification and all the stuff that comes with that, But if you don't have that, then you have all that sprawl on the outside because that's where the market goes, right? It goes
Exactly.
to new construction, and that's not good for a lot of different reasons too.
Yeah, because then everyone's like,
Endless city limits that go out forever.
yeah, and then the commute, like people have to do, you pack more and more people into it, the density where like now people can have a smaller car or not have a car because they live here, work there.
Yeah.
To where 10 years ago, this whole area was just dilapidated.
A lot of
that building been vacant, but now
Yeah.
it's being turned into something that is like an economic driver.
Sure.
To where,
Instead of just like a Halloween house for like once a year.
yeah, exactly.
And the whole thing with gentrification, like what we've seen a lot is people that they inherited a house that's been paid off, right? And their taxes are like $300 a year, $400 a year, and they just don't get a job because it's very cheap to maintain that home.
Yeah.
So they live off of government subsidies and stuff like that. These are young people that are capable of doing something with their lives
They
that
could
they
enter the
choose not
workforce.
to.
Right.
You know what I mean? So a lot of and then you do have gentrification of older people getting pushed out, which now with the regulations of the taxes that they can't bump them up more than that 3.5%.
yeah, so
Yeah.
the change code they did.
That's definitely going to help
That'll
because
definitely
before it was insane how it could just go up thousands of dollars a year. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's just crazy, you know. And now we can't affect it that much because you're locked in at that 3.5%. That's all it's going to grow up. So even if the neighborhood shoots up in value,
Taxes won't. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a good, and I'm glad that government did its part on that side because
Yeah.
that's their issue too.
Yeah. And we've done other incentives where we partner with the seller.
Mm-hmm.
We told them, because they're like, oh, but, I have all this equity. I was like, you don't have the equity because your house hasn't been touched since the 60s.
Yeah.
So like we need to update everything. Windows, doors, floor, ceiling, everything. It needs to be updated. What we can do is you hold on to the house. We'll put in the renovation budget. And then when we sell it, we can split the profits.
Yeah.
So now you capture, your price of what we would pay plus the equity that you could have had.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes them a lot more money and it's more beneficial to them, right? So, we try to find ways to work with sellers and to help out the neighborhoods because these houses, they're ugly. They're really ugly.
Yeah.
You have really beautiful homes next to a house where the shutters are broken, the windows are broken, shingles are missing off the roof,
All right, guys. Well, that was the interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions or anything that you didn't like that we said, or maybe you have some opinions, feel free to reach out to us. We're always up to have a debate about anything or discuss ideas. Please feel free to share this with anybody that you feel is in the real estate space or wants to get into the real estate space. We're here to help. So I appreciate you guys listening, and I will catch you guys on the next one.